In arguments or disagreements, we've all likely witnessed a familiar, heartbreaking scene. The woman falls silent, her eyes filled with unspoken emotion, and then softly utters the words, "It's my fault." This phrase, seemingly an act of humility or appeasement, often carries an underlying ache. It begs the question, why do women so frequently take the blame first, even when they know perfectly well they aren't at fault? Is this merely an individual quirk, or is it the cumulative result of a cultural upbringing, deeply ingrained beliefs, and lingering psychological wounds passed down through generations? This isn't just a matter of curiosity, it's an urgent call for us to understand a complex psychological dynamic affecting women. It's not about who's right or wrong in a specific argument, but a profound reflection of how women are raised, how they perceive relationships, and how they navigate the invisible pressures of society. To truly grasp the reasons behind "it's my fault," we must peel back the layers of culture, psyche, and history. Women are taught to maintain harmony, not to contend. From an early age, the image of a well-behaved, gentle, and yielding girl is often clearly defined in many minds. Fairy tales, parental advice, and even daily interactions implicitly reinforce a belief: a good girl knows how to please others. Girls must be polite. Girls must be considerate. Girls shouldn't argue with elders. These pieces of advice, while initially well-intentioned, unwittingly instill in young girls a template of compliance and deference. Society frequently praises women who are agreeable, tactful, and capable of diffusing conflicts and maintaining harmony in their families and communities. Conversely, strong, outspoken women who dare to assert their opinions or fight for what's right are often labeled bossy, aggressive, or even unfeminine. Consequently, conflict is often perceived as dangerous, a potential threat to stability and peace. In this context, the safest, easiest, and most widely accepted way to smooth things over is to simply take the blame. Taking the blame in this instance doesn't stem from a genuine admission of error, but from an unconscious self-preservation mechanism. It's a response programmed since childhood. If I back down, if I yield, everything will be fine. The misguided belief that a good girl knows how to please others has become so deeply ingrained that many women believe it's their responsibility to ensure others' emotions remain positive. If someone is sad, angry, or upset, they unconsciously assume it's their fault, and taking the blame is the quickest way to restore balance, regardless of the profound inner cost. The fear of losing important relationships. Women, by nature and societal conditioning, are often oriented towards deep emotional connections, from family and friends to romantic partners. These relationships are not just sources of love and support. They are crucial in shaping many women's identities and sense of purpose. Thus, the fear of losing these connections becomes one of the most powerful motivators driving their behavior. In an argument, even if reason dictates they are not at fault, The anxiety about damaging the relationship can override all logical arguments. Taking the blame, in this context, becomes a way to preserve the connection, to prevent the relationship from reaching a breaking point. It's a trade-off between personal integrity and the continuation of a bond they cherish. Quickly accepting fault, even when innocent, is an attempt to appease the other person, to avoid criticism, disapproving glances, and most importantly, the risk of abandonment or losing attachment. The problem arises when this connection is maintained through continuous self-sacrifice and the neglect of one's own needs and desires. When women constantly take the blame to keep the peace, they gradually lose their personal boundaries. These boundaries, which serve as a protective wall for individual values and identity, erode over time. They no longer know where they end and others begin, or what their responsibility is versus the other person's. Constantly prioritizing others' needs over their own, solely to maintain a relationship, ultimately leads to emotional exhaustion and the loss of self. The inner conditioning of emotional responsibility. One of the most profound factors causing women to frequently take the blame is the belief that they are responsible for other people's emotions. This belief often forms in early childhood, when they are taught that maintaining a happy and harmonious atmosphere is their duty, especially within the family. If someone is sad, angry, or hurt, they unconsciously feel they must have done something wrong. This isn't a conscious choice, but a reaction conditioned over time. For example, a young girl might be praised for comforting her crying younger brother or for making her parents happy. These experiences reinforce the idea that pleasing others and taking responsibility for their emotions is a good and socially acceptable behavior. As they grow up, this belief becomes part of their identity, making them feel guilty and responsible when others express negative emotions. They believe that if they can fix others' emotions by taking the blame, they will restore harmony and order. This leads to a habit of apologizing to soothe, even when they feel it's unfair. They may recognize that their apology doesn't truly address the root cause of the problem, but only temporarily extinguishes the fire. However, the internal pressure to be responsible for others' feelings is so immense that they cannot help but do so. The hurt accumulates as they realize that apologizing not only fails to bring lasting peace, but also makes them feel used and misunderstood. They can become exhausted from carrying too many of others' emotions, while their own feelings are neglected. The people-pleaser syndrome, striving to please others. The people-pleaser syndrome is a psychological trait more prevalent in women due to the aforementioned societal expectations. Society often expects women to be gentle, sweet, and agreeable, and expressing anger, disagreement, or self-assertion is often viewed negatively. To avoid rejection, criticism, or being perceived as difficult, women tend to become people-pleasers, constantly striving to meet others' expectations, even when it goes against their own desires. Quickly taking the blame is an unconscious reaction for those with this syndrome. It's a way to avoid confrontation, conflict, and maintain a good image in others' eyes. They fear that if they don't take the blame, they will be seen as selfish, inconsiderate, or uncaring about the other person's feelings. Behind this agreeable and well-behaved facade lies a deep sense of insecurity and the fear of not being good enough. They believe their worth depends on others' approval, and failing to please others will lead to a loss of that worth. People pleasers often struggle to set personal boundaries, say no to unreasonable demands, and prioritize their own needs. They can feel exhausted from constantly trying to please everyone, which often leads to anxiety, depression, and a sense of emptiness. Continuously taking the blame, even when not at fault, is part of this cycle, causing them to sink deeper into losing their true selves and being unable to live authentically. When apologizing becomes a way to regain control, there's a heartbreaking paradox in women's tendency to take the blame. Many apologize not because they are genuinely at fault, but because they want to end the tension. In a conflict situation, especially when feeling powerless, apologizing can become a coping mechanism, a way for them to feel like they still have some control over the situation. Imagine a prolonged argument filled with harsh words and no resolution. A woman might feel overwhelmed, cornered, or simply too exhausted by the tension. In such circumstances, uttering "I'm sorry" can be seen as an emergency switch to stop everything. It provides a temporary sense of relief, ending the discomfort of the confrontation. They believe that if they take the blame, the other person will stop, the atmosphere will calm down, and they can escape the unpleasant situation. However, the consequence of this behavior is prolonged internal harm. Although the argument might cease, the feeling of injustice, being coerced, and being overlooked remains. Each undeserved apology is a knife wound to self-esteem, an instance of self-denial. Over time, this unacknowledged hurt accumulates, forming invisible scars on the soul. Gradually, apologizing becomes a negative habit, weakening their willpower and their ability to protect themselves. Accumulated hurt and the disappearance of the self. When undeserved apologies become a habit, they cause severe consequences for a woman's mental health and sense of self. Each insincere apology is a cut to her self-respect, a moment of denying her own worth. Gradually, the woman loses her true voice. She no longer dares to express her opinions or fight for the truth because she has become too accustomed to yielding and enduring. She begins to doubt herself, wondering if she truly is at fault, if she is being overly sensitive. This self-doubt makes her feel weak, incapable of self-protection. She doesn't dare to face conflict or express disagreement, fearing she will again fall into the situation of having to take the blame. In this way, she slowly becomes a shadow of herself, an accepted version by others, rather than her authentic self with her own thoughts, feelings and needs. The disappearance of the self is a painful process. A woman may feel empty, lost, unsure of who she is or what she wants. She lives her life according to others' expectations, no longer connected to herself. Her relationships with others may be maintained, but her relationship with herself is severely fractured. She can feel trapped in a never-ending cycle where she constantly sacrifices herself to maintain a false peace. How to heal? The journey to healing and reclaiming one's true voice is not easy, but it is entirely possible. It requires courage, perseverance, and a deep process of self-awareness. First and foremost is re-awareness. Women need to learn to clearly distinguish between their true responsibilities and emotions caused by others. Not every negative emotion from another person is your fault. Everyone is responsible for their own feelings. Ask yourself, did I truly cause this, or is this their reaction to the situation? Next is to practice saying no, and I am not wrong. This is the most difficult, but also the most crucial step. Start with small, less stressful situations. For example, if someone asks you to do something you don't want to, politely decline. If you are unfairly blamed in a minor situation, bravely say, I don't believe I was wrong in this instance. This practice will help you build confidence gradually. Setting boundaries is a vital life skill. You need to understand that not every angry person deserves for you to carry their blame. You have the right to protect your emotional space. This may include limiting time with negative people, learning not to react to baseless criticisms, and refusing requests that make you feel exploited. Finally, and most importantly, is to practice self-love. Forgive yourself for having taken undeserved blame. Understand that it was a self-preservation mechanism, a reaction formed from past hurts. Now you can choose a different path. Commit to yourself that you will no longer apologize, just to keep the peace if it harms you. Choose truth over temporary comfort. Self-love is not selfish. It's the foundation for you to genuinely and healthily love others. Take time to listen to yourself, nurture your own needs, and honor your own worth. Conclusion: from I'm sorry to I deserve respect. Apologizing is never wrong if it's the truth. Taking responsibility when you genuinely make a mistake is a sign of maturity, accountability, and courage. It helps you learn from errors, build relationships based on trust, and become a better version of yourself. However, apologizing to exchange yourself for a false sense of peace is something that needs to stop. Women do not need to apologize for existing, for speaking their truth, or for choosing to love themselves first. They do not need to live in fear of rejection or criticism. A woman's worth does not lie in her ability to please everyone, but in her authenticity, her resilience, and her ability to live true to her own self. Let the phrase, "It's my fault," no longer be a defensive instinct, but a sincere apology when truly necessary. More importantly, let it be replaced by a more powerful declaration. I deserve respect, because when women learn to respect themselves, they will automatically earn the respect of others. And that is the foundation for healthy, sustainable relationships, where every individual is free to be themselves, to be loved, and to be honored. This journey may be long, but it is a worthwhile one, leading to true freedom and happiness.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.